Murdoch story. Murdoch is one of the oldest engines on the island of Sodor, and sometimes he can pull goods trains and coaches, but he is also a very old engine, and he's always guided with his actions very good. But Murdoch is old, but still stronger like Gordon and all the other tender engines on his railway. But while he thinks how old he is, Murdoch is only old, but the two engines, like Bash and Duncan, teases him and calls him Grandpa. "Hello, Grandpa," they always say, and Murdoch can sometimes mind it, or not mind it at all, but I just don't know. One day on the island of Sodor, Murdoch was talking to Bash and Duncan, while Duncan and Bash were calling him Grandpa. "Well, excuse me for calling me Grandpa," said Murdoch. Well, how come then?" said Bash. "Well, how many years has it been before you went on your railway? How many years has it been when you first came to the island of Sodor? Have you been in your old railway before?" "Yes, I have," said Murdoch. Long time ago, and I was the older engine on Sodor. And where should I start, I wonder?" He realised that the siding was a good place to start. "As you want to know," said Murdoch, "I'll tell you the story now," he said. And with that, Murdoch began the story. My old railway was a long way away. There were mountains, bridges, and beaches. I was the older engine on the island of Sodor, and my old controller, Mr. Percival, aka the Fin Controller, I used to call him Mr. Percival because I was once his superstar tender engine, and that is why I was once the really old engine on the railway." "And how come?" said Bash. "And what about when your old railway was going to close for 3 days?" "I'll tell you now," said Murdoch. "I'll tell you now," said Murdoch. "I'll tell you now," said Murdoch. When I was talking to 51. "Who's 51? said Duncan. 51 is American and very cheeky. He used to tease me a lot and call me Murky, but that wasn't my real name. It was my nickname. When number 51 was pulling a goods train, he was being so cocky and rude to everyone as he raced too fast along the line. But I was about to warn him not to go too fast, but he wouldn't pay attention. He rolled so dangerously and roughly as he came off the track. I warned him to be careful, but he took no notice. "Listen, Murky, who worries about a few spills?" "We do here," I said, but 51 just laughed. But he didn't laugh. Mr. Percival has ground him in his shed for good, and never pull goods trains again. And that is why he was left in the sheds, except me. I was so sensible and nice, so I took his place while he was still grounded in the sheds. I've enjoyed this job, and I've also did really enjoy enjoy how brilliant it is on Sodor. And I did also enjoy how brilliant it is in my old railway. It was feeling very cool and calm while I was puffing around the island. Then what happened? Said Duncan. I was so excited to be to be a super really useful engine, as I was still smiling about on the island of Sodor. I was being so sensible and fab as I steamed along the track, and my driver said, "Steady now, steady," and I did go steady, but a little bit. Maybe that was a little naughty. I guess, said Bash. Well, it might have been, said Murdoch, but I don't know why. And so he didn't. While he was continuing his story about him in the old railway. While I was puffing around the Grand Canyon, they had a Grand Canyon there, and I was near towards the mountain. And there I was, taking my goods train to the mountain, and there was an old bridge began to creak and judder, and there there was an old coach on it, and not been used for a while. The rails were so slippery that I couldn't stop. My driver applied my brakes, but it was too late, as I crashed into the coach as the last part of the bridge fell down into the viaducts, and in it goes, and so did the coach too, and fell into millions of pieces right in the viaduct. And the rest of me and my goods train tumbled down into the viaduct too, as I came off the rails. And with that, deliveries and all that were everywhere, and I felt so bad what happened, and I felt so hurt. Really? Said Duncan. Yes, really, said Murdoch, and I wasn't impressed. I was so annoyed when it happened, and it did. But meanwhile, when the mess was over, Mr. Percival rushed to the scene of destruction. The mess was cleared up, and the old coach was never seen again. So I had to go to the repair yards to be mended, and an engine took me away. And then when the railway closed down, mines, branch lines, bridges, tunnels, and all the sites of my old railway were closing down. It became poor, and now controllers from other railways went to buy me, but nobody wanted number 51. He was too naughty to go on the railway, so I was chosen to go to the Sodor railway. When I came there, I just loved it very much. And with that, Murdoch had already finished the story, and with that, Bash and Duncan were really impressed. What a good story it was, said Duncan. Exactly, said Bash. I wish I would hear that again, said Bash. I know, said Murdoch. Night was rising, and Murdoch was ready to go to sleep. Oh, I'm tired, he said. I must go to sleep. So good night, he said. And with that, the engine said good night to him back. He went next to Henry. Henry had already heard about the story. I heard your story, he said. It was brilliant. I know, said Murdoch, and it was the most fantastic story what Murdoch ever told. And that was the most fantastic thing what Murdoch ever told on the island of Sodor.